I always try to squeeze in TNA news on the show. Of course. We got a lot of TNA fans in the chat, so I got to squeeze in some TNA news. But I thought this was pretty interesting. TNA squashes rumor on Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling ban. A rumor was circulated because of an interview from Moose. Moose did an interview on the internet, and this is what he said. He's talking about Scott D'Amore, who was his mentor, and I think at one point was his agent. Said, I talk to him at least once every other week, maybe once a month. He's doing great. He has his new Fed, Maple Leaf Pro. They're doing awesome. I wish I could work for them, but you know how business is with the whole TNA. They have a relationship with AEW, and we're in competition with AEW. So you know how all that nonsense goes. Dave Meltzer read that and then took to the newsletter and stated that TNA thinks that AEW is their enemy and that there is an edict that TNA wrestlers are not allowed to work in MLPW, which then caused an uproar because TNA management, who is, I can say this, readily available to answer these questions had Dave reached out, but he clearly did not reach out to them for comment. He said so this is from Mike Johnson, multiple TNA sources have debunked this as 100% incorrect. Their main argument, this is Mike Gilbert's editorial, the main argument that TNA is putting out there is that Moose is stupid, which I think is a pretty solid argument. But we also know from this show that Moose is also a liar. So
are you telling me Moose lied in the internet interview and caused trouble?
Yes.
Get out.
Yeah. Get out. Yeah. Tommy Dreamer came out and put a statement on Twitter, and the picture that he put up was a picture of him wearing a Moose Sucks Eggs t-shirt saying that Scott D'Amore is my friend. TNA wrestlers have worked MLPW before, and they'll work there again. They have. I think one of the issues was early on is that Scott did what Scott loves to do most when he was booking TNA talent, is have them lose to AEW talent. So that was happening. But there's been a lot of scheduling conflicts. A lot of the MLP shows are happening right around the same time as TNA shows. So, but most recently Santino is being booked on it. Now I get the feeling that Moose was denied going there at some point, and they didn't explain to him why. And so he made up his own reasons. I think there's a grain of truth into what he's saying. I believed it at first, and I still believe there's a part of it because I know for a fact that people in that company don't like Scott D'Amore because they feel like he's feeding Dave, negative information on their company since he got fired. Like a lot of people think that. And in fact, Carlos Silva replied to Dave and said, no, our guys have worked there before, and they can work there, and they'll work there again. And he goes, Scott can just call me and ask these questions. And he told that to Dave Meltzer instead of telling that to Scott, because I fully believe that they think that Scott is the one telling Dave this information. So now, because I don't think that Dave just read the interview and then went with that. I think he probably reached out to somebody who confirmed it and twisted that knife a little bit. But TNA is adamantly saying that this is not the truth. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But saying that Moose is just stupid is a pretty good argument. In fact, Don Callis, all over Twitter, quote tweeting Dave, he's like, nope, Moose is the most trusted name in news. So Callis works for Maple Leaf Pro. He's friends with Moose, clearly, and he's making fun of Dave for running a story that came from Moose, which is, bad on Dave, I guess.
So here's the thing, though, is I think that Callis is a smart man who knows how to manipulate the internet.
Yeah.
And why is Scott saying this if there's not some accurate? Like, has Scott been denied people to come over? Now, here's the thing, too. Are there unwritten rules? Like, I know they have one there. Like, as WWE saying, hey, is this something TNA has? Are they denying sending people there lately? Like, is this something, like, why is Scott saying this necessarily? Right? If it's something that could be easily misproven. Because if the news is coming from Scott, why say it? So I do wonder if there's something more than we are seeing from that side.
Yeah.
I don't.
He was probably denied booking certain people. They did send him Santino recently. He probably wanted dates on guys like Moose and other people, and they denied him, but they never told him why. And when there's no communication, you tend to come up with your own reasons at times, is what I'm guessing. But the article stated, this is from PW Insider. Now I have not, since the first 2 shows, I have not watched any Maple Leaf Pro. But they recently worked on September 5th, which was the same night that TNA was running. And then I do know a couple months ago, TNA was running in Ontario, and at the same time, like the same weekend, Maple Leaf Pro was running Windsor. So TNA was in like Toronto area, and Border City, not Border City, Maple Leaf Pro was running in Windsor, which is the Border City home. And they were running, it was the same weekend, they were running the same time. So they couldn't send talent over there. But I do know TNA talent have worked there before. But I don't know why this is becoming an issue. I just found it funny that like collectively Tommy Dreamer, Don Callis, and Carlos Silva, who brought up that Moose knows this now, are just the argument is Moose is just dumb.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think anybody would deny that.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if there's some other, because it's wrestling, dude. Everybody lies. Like everyone's like, oh, obviously this, but then we find out years later that there is truth to things. Like, you know, so I never, especially when the mouthpiece is Mike Johnson and Dave Scherer, you have to question everything that's being said about anything.
And it's so I'm reading what Mike Johnson wrote, but this is verbatim what Tommy Dreamer and Carlos Silva said on Twitter.
I get that too, but I mean, like Mike Johnson and Dave Scherer are not trustworthy sources on anything. No. So I'm not defending Dave because I'm sure Dave is reporting what Scott D'Amore told him. I'm like, I just think there's a lot of unwritten stuff that we aren't seeing that we don't know. And politics is a weird thing where there's a lot of where written edicts are not necessarily how things are enforced. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do think that there's something more to all of this. And I think Moose being dumb is definitely a massive factor in all this.
Yeah, I get the feeling that whenever, because those first couple of shows, TNA sent a lot of talent. And they all got beat by AEW talent. I get the feeling TNA was not happy about that, especially considering they got this partnership with WWE. And AEW talent would not be allowed to reciprocate it in that same thing. You know what I mean? So I get the feeling they were not happy with that, but that still didn't stop them from continuing to send people. How many people and which talents? The only one that I know of recently was Santino, who is a legitimately contracted talent. Worked their shows. I don't know. I think people, and I think Dave might have even. I did read what Dave wrote in the Observer, but I'm not remembering everything right now. It was either him or somebody else connected this to. This must be WWE's power over TNA, forcing this. Here's what I want people to stop doing. If TNA does something stupid or TNA does something unsavory, you don't need to connect that to WWE because you're letting TNA off the hook when you do that, because TNA is more than capable of doing some stupid shit that would be unsavory. TNA, they do. There is some legitimate heat with Scott D'Amore there. Tommy Dreamer's not going to say it publicly. In fact, Tommy Dreamer's probably telling the truth that Scott D'Amore is still his friend. Right. But there's other people like upper management that really don't like him right now. And so I would assume that if they were not letting people work there, it's because they just didn't like Scott.
Let's be real. You got this deal with WWE right now, which for the large part of this deal, TNA guys have to light out for WWE guys. It's just happened frequently. Doesn't help your deal if they also go to AEW and have to light out for those guys who you don't have a deal with. You know, like it's not a great, like TNA is kind of in a no-win situation with any of this, in all honesty.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think if Scott was like, hey, Moose was most recently the X Division champion during some of the MLPW tapings. If Scott was like, hey, can I have your X Division champion? We want him to come over here and lay down for fucking whoever, Takeshita or whoever works those shows, Speedball. Mm-hmm. Like TNA's probably going to say no. You know what I mean? Like,
as they should. Like that's
so it's probably not a very complicated thing, but somebody's mad at somebody, and so they're leaking information, and the media is running with it because it's, hey, look, we're talking about it here because A, I thought it was pretty funny, but B, the thumbnail and the YouTube clip is probably going to do like this might be a $2.50 video. Like, let's be honest. That's pretty fucking good in YouTube ads. So
I'm thinking.
Yeah, I get it. They just couldn't keep their hands off the story, and of course, when you involve WWE forcing TNA's hand to mistreat their own talent, which again, I'm just laughing when people connect everything to WWE. Is like, guys, not everything is involving the war between WWE and AEW. Like TNA can do dumb things on their own. Like they don't need WWE guidance there.
Yeah, but I don't think, and it's weird for me to take up for TNA. I don't know if it's a good move for TNA to send guys up there that are going to lose. Like
right,
because that does become fodder for the wrestling war.
Yeah.
If they're sending out their guy, I mean, that's just wrestling 101, right? Like back in the day, if you sent your champion to another territory and he's doing JOBs, like the promoter's not going to be happy. And I don't blame David Silva if they weren't to send, even like I said, if they didn't want to send guys there because they didn't want to losing the competition guys. That makes total sense just taking WWE out of the equation altogether.
Right.
Like, I don't think this necessarily has to be like some type of grand conspiracy to see it might not be good business for TNA to do that.
Yeah. But I do get the feeling that because of this whole story, that you'll be seeing more TNA stars on that show. So,
for sure. Yeah. Next time.
If this was the purpose behind D'Amore leaking the story, if that's what he did, I don't know who did it. It could have very well been Dave just reading what Moose said and wrote a whole thing about it and connected the dots there to this grand conspiracy against AEW, which a lot of people on the internet do. Everything is coming back to poor mistreated billionaire Tony Khan, like with $185 million TV deal. Yeah, poor mistreated Tony Khan. But that could be exactly what just happened. But because he did in an argument to somebody from TNA, one of the TNA's like production guys, quoted what Moose said, and it seemed like that was the majority of the basis of the story, which is why Don Callis is making fun of him so hard. So.
Mm-hmm. So here's a lesson: anybody that wants to interview Moose, you're going to get a great soundbite. We did.
Yeah, and you can bait him into talking about stuff. I got him to admit that he thinks he could beat up Floyd Mayweather, and sure enough, I strategically baited him into that, and because I knew Fightful would pick it up, and sure enough, Jeremy Lambert had the story the next day. Now the link to our video was buried in the article. They put so on their website. They have one of their YouTube videos at the top that had nothing to do with the interview, but in the body of the article was a hyperlink to our interview. So we got no business from it.
No, I mean, they're not Mike and JD fans necessarily.
Yeah. Hold on. Nap 528 said, I did see SRS say Scott denied it to him. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, Scott D'Amore did deny the whole story too, and so everybody's just pointing it back to Moose just talking out of his ass, which again, highly likely.
Highly likely.
Yeah. But all right, guys, I think that's going to do it for us this time on the Mike and JD Show. Please head to patreon.com/the Mike and JD Show. Become a $5 subscriber today. That's how we support the show. That's how we pay for fucking expensive ass StreamYard. That's how we pay for all of our equipment, and that's how we justify to our wives to continue to let us do this stupid ass podcast. So please head over there, or if you're just watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and comment. We would greatly appreciate it. Or if you're listening to us on the Voices of Wrestling Network, download the show, give us a 5-star review, and share the show with your friends. We would greatly appreciate it. And until next time, mahalo.
Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A-game. Made no rain from the track when we unite and spit. This is an A-game, better bring your A-game. Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A-game.